a ton of running back movement in the National Football League. Josh, where do you want to start?
Um, God, there were so many running back movement or so much running back movement. It was hard to keep track of, but I think I know where you want to start.
So you'll be shocked by this answer. I actually was not that excited by the Eagles getting Saquon Barkley. And
Really?
and because I like DeAndre Swift, and he actually went for a lower value than Saquon. Now, I do think Saquon is a better player, but it is back to my belief that I have already told you, which is I don't pay running backs big money. Now, I don't mind this contract because it's essentially a 2-year contract, and I do think Saquon Barkley is going to provide a different element to the offense. I think he's going to catch a lot of passes out of the backfield from new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. I think he's going to have the best 2 seasons of his career, potentially 3 or more, in a Philadelphia Eagles uniform. But just because the position is running back, I am not completely over the moon about it. I think it does open up the offense. I think it will help. I think he's a great player. But if you're asking me the free agent I'm most excited that the Eagles got, it's not Saquon Barkley, is all I'm saying.
Really? I'm surprised by that. Um, I love the Josh Jacobs to Green Bay pick.
See, I don't. I thought I like Aaron Jones better. I just think Aaron Jones is the better back. And I love that for the Vikings, by the way, whoever their quarterback is going to be.
See, I think by getting Josh Jacobs, the Packers are saying, "Oh, we liked what we saw from Jordan Love last season. Let's go get him a big time running back," which I
So
thought
Aaron Jones is not a big time running back? Is that what you're saying?
that I was just going to get there. I'm like, "Wait, you're okay, you just created a two-headed monster at running back with him and Aaron Jones, and then not even 10 minutes later, the Packers are releasing Aaron Jones." I'm like, I don't get it.
So
I
I think this is more of a money issue, and I think it's more of a durability issue. Jacob's a little bit cheaper, and he's been a little bit more healthy. Though Aaron Jones has had a great career every time he's touched the football. I could argue 2 years ago Josh Jacobs peaked. He was not the same running back last year. Now it could be because of Vegas' offensive line, but Green Bay's offensive line is not what it used to be. It's still good, but it is not at the level that it was when Aaron Rodgers was in his prime. I think Jacobs will have a very good year. I just don't think he's a better overall player than Aaron Jones because I talk about running backs all the time and how they're mostly valued off their offensive line play. And while I do believe that is true, there are some backs that are just independent of their offensive line. And Saquon Barkley gets yards no matter what with the worst offensive line in football. That's why we all think he's going to thrive behind a very good Eagles offensive line, even though they did lose the centerpiece to that line. It's still a very good O line, and I'll get to that in the next topic. But, Tony Pollard goes to Tennessee. I don't know what to make of the Titans. I think the Titans are the weirdest team in football. They, I mean, they have Will Levis. Whoop-de-doo. They paid Calvin Ridley a bag. Calvin Ridley's going to probably go gamble with that money again and get suspended again. They go out and sign Tony Pollard, so they're getting Will Levis more weapons, but their offensive line's not great. Their defense needs a complete and utter rebuild. I don't love that move. The move that I think absolutely works, and I thought was one of the best moves of the running back sort of frenzy, was obviously Derrick Henry going from Tennessee to Baltimore. Baltimore wanted to make the deal happen at the trade deadline. Now they don't have to give up anything to get him. Rushing lanes are going to be open, wide open when you base that off Lamar Jackson. You're trying to defend Lamar. You're not going to have as many safeties in the box. I think Derrick Henry to pair up with J.K. Dobbins is going to be an excellent pairing for Baltimore. I think that's an upgrade. As much as I like Gus Edwards, I think he's going to do well with the Chargers. And then, Joe Mixon to Houston. I think Joe Mixon, again, is a very good back. If I was Cincinnati, I would have not paid him. I think they made the right decision there. But I think getting C.J. Stroud, a better upgraded running back than Devin Singletary, I like that move for Houston.
see. I was really confident that Saquon was going to go to Houston. I really was. I can't fault him for wanting to basically go back to school in a way, since Penn State is right by Philadelphia. And I think he grew up in right outside of Philly, if I
He
remember
did.
correctly.
He said today in his press conference that he used to go to Eagles training camp as a kid.
So I, by no means am I faulting him for going to Philadelphia, but I would have loved to have seen him paired with C.J. Stroud down in Houston, along with Nico Collins, Tank Dell. I think he would have thrived in that offense. But again, Saquon's going to do great in Philadelphia because you already have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown on the outside, which the defense has to worry about. You have to worry about Jalen Hurts running the ball. Now you have to deal with Saquon Barkley. And don't forget Dallas Goedert
I
either.
was just about to say that because I thought you were going to. Don't forget about Dallas Goedert. Don't forget they still have the best right tackle in football, Wayne Johnson, a top 5 left tackle, and Jordan Mawaya. Cam Urgis, very good right guard last year, is going to move over to center. I'm interested to see what they do in the right guard spot, but we can address that in the draft. We have the best offensive line coach in the NFL, and Jeff Stoutland.
Yeah, but I like the trade for Houston to get Joe Mixon because we saw how valuable he was for Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Do I think he'll have that same type of impact in Houston? Not to that degree, but I think it will still help C.J. Stroud.
I see. I don't think he had that great of an impact with Burrow. I think Mixon's best days were when they had Andy Dalton. And obviously the passing game was not spread out. They had AJ Green, they had Tyler Boyd in his prime. I thought Mixon had some okay years in Cincinnati with Burrow. I think he will absolutely help Stroud. I think that Houston, I think Bobby Slowick and that system, I think Mixon's going to have a very good year. And again, paid him a little bit less than Saquon Barkley. You can spend a little more on the defense side of the ball, which they did, getting Danielle Hunter. I think it worked out good for Houston. I think it's a good backup plan, if you will.
I agree. I want to go back to Aaron Jones, though, because this is not the first time that a Packer has left Green Bay to go to Minnesota. We saw it with Greg Jennings. We saw it with Brett Favre. I'm sure there are others.
Zadarius Smith as well.
Yes, Zadarius Smith. I just find it hilarious that, oh, well, he's gone from Green Bay. Where did he go? Minnesota.
So I'll say this. Generally, for some odd reason, I have noticed that in the NFL, and this may have changed over the last couple of years, why maybe I'm not as excited about Saquon as most people. When players in the National Football League go to division rivals via free agency, often they're not as productive, weirdly. Some of them are the exception. Obviously, way back in the day when Jamal Lewis went from Baltimore to our hometown Browns, Jamal Lewis had a very good year. Years, if you will, here in Cleveland. But before that, there has not been a ton of division. Obviously, Brett Favre going from Green Bay, you mentioned, to Minnesota, going to the NFC Championship game. But it's really a 50-50 proposition as to whether it will work. It's more about your scheme and your talent versus that. We saw Pittsburgh pick up Patrick Queen going from Baltimore to Pittsburgh. I think that's a very interesting one.
Yeah, we'll get more into that in some of the other free agency moves.
Steelers obviously are very good with linebackers, but as I already mentioned, man, you got Justin Jefferson, you got Jordan Addison. People like Sam Darnold because he's good in the room. I'm still not sure he's going to be their week 1 starter. I think it may be Michael Penix, I alluded to earlier. But
I think it's going to be Bo Nix.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I'm not going to push back on that. But Kevin O'Connell is an offensive head coach. The Vikings are going to have to do some stuff on the defensive end. They don't have many pieces on defense, so they're going to have to win a lot of games by shootout. The question is going to be, can they? And I think Aaron Jones is going to help them with it. I like the signing, especially when they didn't get little productive last year out of Alexander Madison.
The NFC North is going to be such a fascinating division.
Oh, God, you could make an argument second best division in football right behind the AFC North. Maybe AFC West, AFC East. You can make an argument depending on how those teams fall, but Chicago, I think, is going to be sneaky. I like the addition of DeAndre Swift. I think that's a great addition to that room. And I think they're going to draft Caleb Williams. And I think that they are going to draft Roma Duce out of Washington with that number 9 pick to go along with DJ Moore, to go along with Cole Kmet. I think that Bears offense could be very scary, which I think is one of the reasons why Minnesota did not want to keep Kirk Cousins, because they want to keep their offense as good as possible, because Detroit is young and very good, and the Packers, Jordan Love just ascended at the end of last year, and you would suspect that those players are only going to get better, which Green Bay also spent money in free agency, which is something they don't do very often.
Right. I do think the loss of Aaron Jones will hurt the Packers offense, as we already talked about.
Well, wait, you just said you like Josh Jacobs.
But you missed my other point. I liked the addition of Josh Jacobs, but I was looking forward to seeing the tandem of Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones together in Green Bay.
See, I may be the only person. I don't like having 2 running backs on the field at the same time. I don't think it works.
Okay.
Not in 2023 football.
I think it would have worked beautifully for Green Bay.
1985 it would.
I think it would have worked beautifully for Green Bay, because then you have Christian Watson on the outside, Romeo Doubs, who came on at the end of the season, and then in the backfield, you have Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones. How do you defend that defensively? Good luck.
Well, it's not that hard. You play man coverage, because those Green Bay receivers are still not great at separating from man coverage. I just said it.
Okay, there you go. You want to play man coverage? Here you go, Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, and your offensive line isn't great, and I can penetrate that, and I can make it 3rd and 6.
Josh Jacobs can run for more than that, but
well, can he? I didn't see it last year.
But now let's get back to your Philadelphia Eagles and their offensive line, and I guess their defensive line also, because Jason Kelce officially retired. And then this one was a little bit more surprising to me, because I didn't see it coming. I don't know about you.
I saw it coming, because I obviously am a fan, and the reporters have reported it. I did not mention it on this show because I didn't want to believe it, but I knew it was coming.
Okay. Well, both Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox retired. So those are 2 pretty big holes on both your defensive line and your offensive line.
Can I say this? I think it's going to be a bigger hole in the locker room than it is on the field. I'm not so worried about the on the field portion, and let me explain why. Jason Kelce, I don't know if people know this or not, but Cam Urges, this is going to be his 3rd year in the NFL. His first year, he sort of redshirted. He was a backup center / guard. The second year was when he played next to Kelce at right guard, because we let Isaac Seumalo go to Pittsburgh. But Jason Kelce was in the room because he didn't know if he was going to play 1 more year or 2 more years, etc. Jason Kelce handpicked Cam Urges to be his replacement at center. Jason Kelce said that he has that dog in him, and that he knows Cam Urges is going to be a great center in the National Football League. Spent time with him before the draft, has spent time coaching him up, which is not very common if you think about it, between offensive linemen transitioning. In the same retrospect, the Eagles were preparing it with Fletcher Cox. They still have 2 very good defensive tackles in Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. As I keep mentioning, I would be very surprised if maybe even it happens during this show, if one of Josh Reddick or not Josh Reddick, Josh Sweat or Hassan Reddick gets moved. Because now with the addition of Bryce Huff, who was a very good pass rusher last year for the New York Jets in limited action, I think he's going to be very good in the Vic Fangio scheme. Nolan Smith will get more time. They blossomed him out of Georgia. They think he's going to have a very good sophomore year. So I'm not worried about that yet. Brandon Graham coming back for 1 more year on the defensive line rotation as well. What I am more worried about is as great of a leader as Lane Johnson is, and as great of a leader as Brandon Graham is, and as great of a leader as Darius Slay is, and as great of a leader as C.J. Garner Johnson is, and we just brought back, and of course, as great of a leader as Jalen Hurts is, and guys like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, the Eagles do have a lot of leaders in that locker room. I think I'd put Landon Dickerson, who they just signed an extension with. He's going to be a great left guard for years to come as well. But are all those guys collectively going to be as great of leaders as those two men? Jason Kelce was drafted in the 6th round out of Cincinnati in 2011, and Fletcher Cox, who was the 12th overall pick out of Mississippi State in 2012. Those two guys, along with Lane Johnson, 2013, round 1, pick 4 out of Oklahoma. Those 3 guys were the foundation of the Philadelphia Eagles. They were the reason why they won a Super Bowl in 2017. They were the reason why they were this close to winning the Super Bowl in 2022. And so, with all my rambling, I'll say this. There's a lot of thought out there that Philadelphia is going to take a step back. I don't think that is the case. I don't think this year. I'm going to say this. I'm not saying Super Bowl this year, but I do think 10, 11 wins for this Eagles team and a playoff win or 2 is feasible, because I do think the new coordinators, the new additions, I think all of that, and Jason Kelce, I don't know if you heard this, Josh, on the New Heights podcast this week with Travis Kelce, had pretty much said, God damn, I wish I didn't retire, because this Eagles team is going to be pretty freaking good.
Yeah. Just want to jump back to NFL running back movement for just a second, because Ian Rappaport just tweeted out that Green Bay is using a rare 4-year qualifying offer on A.J. Dillon to keep him around.
Okay, so they're going to have A.J. Dillon and Josh Jacobs. A.J. Dillon, decent backup, but they're basically replacing Josh Jacobs with Aaron Jones.
Yep. So, just wanted to mention that super quick. But to go back to the Eagles, I think Jason Kelce is a little bit of a bigger loss on the field than maybe this is just because I'm not an Eagles fan like you are.
Oh, Jason Kelce is absolutely a loss. I never said that. Jason Kelce is the heart and soul of the team. Nobody will ever replace the greatest center ever.
Right. So I do think it's good. It takes some time for Jalen Hurts to develop new chemistry with Kelce's replacement, and you might see that on the field for the first 3 weeks or so.
I agree, but as I alluded to, and not many people know this and you're not really supposed to unless you're really deep in the weeds in the NFL. But the Eagles have had an offensive line coach named Jeff Stoutland. I named him a little bit earlier. He came in with Chip Kelly when Chip Kelly became the head coach in 2013. Before that, he was with Nick Saban in Alabama. There is a reason why Jeff Stoutland has been retained by Doug Peterson, by Nick Sirianni, by all of the staff changes in Philadelphia over the last 10 years. Every single offensive line that's come through that facility loves about Jeff Stoutland. And that's why in Philadelphia, we pretty much call ourselves Offensive Lineman University, because of what that man can do to coach offensive lines. In that regard, I think we'll be okay, but you can absolutely not replace Jason Kelce.
Yes. And the other thing with Fletcher Cox is I feel like he was an older version of Myles Garrett. And here's what I mean by that. When I watched Eagles games, from my perspective, it was Fletcher Cox that was mostly getting the double teams when the Eagles would rush the passer or if they were blitzing, which would allow the other guys like a Derek Barnett and some of your other defensive line.
For his prime, yes, I would say this year he got more one-on-one matches, but he had a very productive year because Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis just both take up 2 gaps by themselves. You don't even need a double team. They're so big and wide. They take up 2 gaps by themselves. I think those guys are very good players. Again, I'm not saying that Fletcher Cox isn't great and that we're not going to miss him, because we absolutely will miss him. But I think the Eagles were preparing for this. And I think that those young guys are going to take it's gonna be like what it was before Fletch and Kelce became Fletch and Kelce, right? It may take a year or two for them to become those guys, but they are going to be ascending this season, and it's not going to be as big of a drop off as I think most people think. It's all I'm saying.
Right. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be a massive drop off, but I do think there will be a little bit of a drop off. Let me just say this before we move on super quick. I do think that the Eagles have the benefit, much like what you were saying with the Falcons earlier. They don't have a first place schedule. Philly has a second place schedule.
That's one of the benefits of being so bad at the end of last year. You gave the division away to Dallas.
Yeah. So they don't have as tough of a schedule, although they do have to play Cleveland.
Well, we don't have to play San Francisco, and we don't have to play Detroit. We get to play Green Bay, which I believe will be at home, and then we get to play the Rams.
Yes, you do.
Which, I mean, the Rams are a good team, but they're not San Francisco. And Green Bay's a good team, but I'm sorry, they're not Detroit. And playing Detroit in Detroit would have been an animal.
But you still have to play the AFC North, so you have to play Cleveland, Baltimore, and
we
Cincinnati.
do, but from all indications, by the way, that Cleveland game is going to be in Brazil. So we have no idea how the hell that's going to play out. Pittsburgh has always struggled in Philly. So I think the Eagles will win that game. Going to Baltimore and going to Cincinnati will be two tough games. I will acknowledge that.
I swear, if that game between the Browns and Eagles is week 1 in Brazil, I'm not going to be happy. Because I would, as a Browns fan, I've started really enjoying going to other team stadiums. I would have loved to have gone to Lincoln Financial Field in Philly to see the Browns play the Eagles. Because I've heard nothing but great things about Lincoln Financial Field.
Let's not get off topic. Let's dive into the other takeaways from NFL free agency. I'm just going to let you start and roll.
So we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I absolutely loved the amount of free agents that we saw jump from one division rival to another. We talked about a couple already with Aaron Jones going to Minnesota from Green Bay, Saquon Barkley going from New York to Philadelphia. I loved the pickup by Pittsburgh of Patrick Queen from Baltimore. Geno Stone, he left Baltimore to go to Cincinnati. Calvin Ridley, he left Jacksonville to go to Tennessee.
Yeah, that one I don't get.
I'm sure I'm missing some, but that was one of my favorite parts of free agency this season. I feel like it was a more common thing this season than in the past.
I'm going to do something that Josh Ungar would usually do to me. And I'm going to pose a question to Josh. And I've been saying this for the last 4 or 5 years or so. But I truly believe, and this is no disrespect to the greatness that is going to start next week, which is a 3-week basketball tournament on the hardwood with the men's and women's NCAA tournaments. But Mr. Unger, I am ready to declare that NFL free agency is officially the real March Madness.
What?
Yes.
No.
This is more exciting than the NCAA tournament.
Hell
Absolutely.
No.
The greatest sport in the world, the most watched product in the world, and the sport of hope. Where all 32 teams, yes, including the Tennessee Titans and including the Carolina Panthers, truly believe if we get the right guy, we can go to the Super Bowl. I don't think I'm misstepping in that statement. The NFL, we've seen it, worst to first every single year. Some of my biggest takeaways are I actually disagree with you on Pittsburgh. I don't like what Pittsburgh did. I don't like it at all. I think trading Deontay Johnson was a mistake, and I think signing Patrick Queen was a mistake, and it's such a steal on brand. We're going to get defense and not spend on offense because we need another linebacker. Now, like we already have four, and we don't need a receiver, even though we really only have, one great one and one really good one. And Carolina, they're not going to be great. They're trying with Bryce Young. They picked up Robert Hunt from the Dolphins. They trade for Deontay Johnson, at least adding to that offensive weaponry. And some other things that I thought Miami lost a lot of pieces on defense. They're starting to get some guys. They just signed a corner who I think it's Fuller off the top of my head from Atlanta.
And they also signed Jordan Poyer.
And they signed Jordan Poyer from Buffalo, who Buffalo has lost a lot of people on defense, a lot of veterans, but they still have Josh Allen. So
but they
they're going
trade
to be
Gabe
in the mix.
Davis to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Gabe Davis. By the way, I like what Jacksonville did. I think Jacksonville, very sneaky, got two good pickups, both from the Bills. Mitch Morris, the center, who was a very good center. He's going to help with that offensive line. And then Gabe Davis. Say what you want about Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis can make big plays in big moments. He's a very good. He's not a number one receiver, but actually we saw that Jacksonville offense 2 years ago, which is Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. I'm forgetting now who that third weapon was. And obviously they have ETN. Oh, Zay Jones and ETN. And then you add in Gabe Davis to that mix. I really like what Jacksonville did. And I'm going to say two more things. Number one is, I don't think it's going to be being talked about a lot, but if Jerry Jeudy gets right, that's a hell of a deal by Andrew Berry to go out and get him to be your number 2 wide receiver next to Amari Cooper.
Before you continue, I want to stay on the Browns for 1 second. What did you think of them picking up Jameis Winston?
To be quite frank, they signed Jameis Winston because they did not want to hear Joe Flacco's name when Deshaun Watson made the first bad play of the season.
You're probably right.
They'll never say it, but that's why they went with Jameis.
You're probably right, but I actually like the pickup of Jameis for a different reason. With Flacco, he plays a completely different style of quarterback from Deshaun Watson. Whereas with Jameis Winston, he's that mobile quarterback.
Winston's, he can move. He's not mobile.
I would say he's more similar to Deshaun Watson than Joe Flacco.
Well, then Flacco, yeah, everybody is besides Nick Foles. Joe Flacco can't move.
So, but that's my point though, is because Winston has a similar style to Deshaun Watson, it won't be as dramatic of a change in quarterback play style.
Yeah, and Flacco did turn the ball over a lot, which we both acknowledged last year that Brown fans would not acknowledge, but so does Winston. So
right. And
the other thing is,
go ahead.
I'm gonna say something that may catch people off guard. It may even catch you off guard.
Go.
We banged on this team a ton last year. We had no idea what the hell they were doing, and I think they actually have a direction. But it's contingent on two things. It's contingent on getting the quarterback right in the draft and trading for a number 1 wide receiver. So it may not happen, but dare I say, there's nowhere to go but up for New England. I am not as pessimistic on New England's future as I am going into last year. I think if they get some receivers, I think if they get Jane Daniels, we hope that Washington obviously trades or picks Drake May for my sake, because I think Jane Daniels is the better quarterback. But I am not loving what I am hearing out of Jets camp when it comes to Mr. Future Vice President, apparently, of the United States. I think the Jets are a joke. I think they're a complete disaster. I think they make the Browns look like the early Browns in the 2000s look well run. That's how much of a joke I think the Jets are. So with that being said, I think New England, I think Gerard Mayo is going to have a very good defense. Hunter Henry is still there. They added some pass catchers. Their defense, we know, is very good. They're getting Matthew Judon back. They're getting Christian Gonzalez back. I'm not saying they're going to be a great team, but could they go from basement dwellers to like 6 or 7 wins and have a pretty optimistic future? Like, yeah, I actually am not as down on New England's future. I just wanted to put that out there.
So, why did you say for your sake you hope the Commanders take Drake May?
Because I don't think Drake May is very good.
So
I think Drake May is Mitch Trubisky, and I think that they're going to pick Jaden Daniels, and I think Jaden Daniels is going to be very good for 10 years.
So you're saying that as an Eagles fan. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Who else would I be saying? For my sake, I'm an Eagles fan. I don't want to face Jaden Daniels twice a year.
It took me a second to put 2 and 2 together on that one.
I think Drake May is Mitch Trubisky. I'd rather face Drake May twice a year, but I think they're going to pick Jaden Daniels, and I think he fits Kingsbury's scheme better.
Yeah. I think the Commanders were hoping the Bears would maybe trade out.
By the way, the Commanders signed Austin Eckler. They signed Bobby Wagner. They signed a lot of good free agents. Doris Armstrong from Dan Quinn. They're building a culture there. But I keep telling my one buddy, who's a big Commanders fan, he's so excited about the Commanders this year. He thinks that there's actually a chance that they win the division. And I keep telling him, you got to get the quarterback right, though. If you pick the wrong quarterback, guess what? You're still stuck in 10 years of hell.
Yeah. I mean, they're in hell anyway because that stadium is terrible.
Well, yeah, but guess what? You know who was in hell? Cincinnati. And guess what? Joe Burrow took that franchise, but people forget this. They went from winning 2 games with Joe Burrow his rookie year to being this close to winning the Super Bowl a year later. It's why I just said if you're Carolina, it is literally the sport of hope. By the way, hey, Vegas, is Devontae Adams available? Can we trade like 2 firsts and get Devontae Adams? If I'm New England or I'm Carolina, I'm one of these teams with a young quarterback. I'm seeing what Vegas would take for him off the top of my head. I'm calling around. What would Minnesota be willing to give up for Justin Jefferson? I'm making moves, man.
I don't trust the Panthers because David Tepper still owns them. So there's.
Well, listen, the Cincinnati owner's a terrible owner. Jimmy Adams a terrible owner, and the Browns. Some people thought the Browns were a dark horse Super Bowl team last year with Joe Flacco. Ownership does not matter as much if you get the right quarterback. Indianapolis, we saw, was a disaster with Jim Irsay. Did anybody think they were a disaster with Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck? No.
Fair enough. Let's go all in. Go out, sign Eric Kendricks. Dallas, are you going to do anything?
The Cowboys are going to win 12 games, and they're going to be eliminated in the first round. Next question.
I feel like the Cowboys are just satisfied with that. It's honestly hilarious. Hey, Dallas, you're not America's team. You haven't been relevant since the late 90s. That the Browns have a playoff win more recent than you. How pathetic is that?
Wait, do they?
I think.
No, Dallas won a playoff game last year.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Shit.
Well.
No, they didn't. Green Bay beat them.
No, I'm talking the year before. Remember the first round? They beat Tampa.
Oh, yeah, shit, you're right.
And by the way, as an Eagles fan, this is going to sound weird. But let me defend the Dallas Cowboys real quick.
What the hell?
People are saying they haven't been relevant. They haven't been Super Bowl relevant, but they've been a very relevant franchise for the last decade. They make the playoffs every year. They win 12 games every year. That's more than the Browns have won. The Browns have had 2 winning seasons.
Yep. That is true.
So they absolutely are relevant.
No, they're not.
So what? So you would rather be the Panthers than be the Cowboys, basically what you're saying.
The Panthers have been to a Super Bowl more recently than the Cowboys.
They have, but would you rather have been a 1 Super Bowl, lose it, and be crap for 30 years? Or would you rather be consistently in the playoffs every single year and at least watch a winning football team. I think I'd rather be a Cowboy fan over the last 30 years than Carolina.
And have Stephen A. roast me constantly?
Well, that doesn't matter because Jerry Jones owns the team.